What's the latest with the trade rumors around Major League Baseball with all the craziness going on in the NBA? What's going on as far as the holdup with Alex Bregman and for Pete Alonso seems to be holding up some players at least from signing right now? And what are some of the worst contracts in Major League Baseball that might be keeping your favorite team from signing the player you want them to go after? That and more ahead next here at The Upside. And welcome into the MLB Hot Stove Daily here at the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us late on a Tuesday evening. Unfortunately, we did not get to do our earlier live. Unfortunately, jury duty kept me from doing my live. But here we are. We are back live. So be sure to hit that like and subscribe if you're new here. Be sure to join us every single night throughout the MLB season as we keep you updated on the latest from your favorite team. What's the latest trade speculation? What signing are they going to do? Who's injured? Who's not? What's your rotation going to look like? What depth do you have in your starting rotation? Who could you call up from the minors? What's your bullpen look like? What is your lineup looking like? And what is your star player looking like this year? We'll get into some rankings, some predictions as we get closer to the start of spring training as well. We'll go day by day through spring training and break down every single team, where their roster stands as well. And then during the regular season, we can keep you guys up to date on literally every single item that we possibly can. Most notably, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. What's going on with him, I'm sure will be a daily update for you guys as we get closer to the trade deadline. You might have multiple videos a day on him because I would expect if things are not going well for Toronto and he didn't sign that extension, that's one name we're going to be paying quite a bit of attention to. Same thing with the Chicago Cubs and Kyle Tucker. But first, let's look at some of the trade rumors that we've seen over the last 24 to 48 hours. The first one that comes to mind is Nolan Arenado and the Boston Red Sox. Now, Nolan Arenado has 3 years left on his deal, $64 million. You're going to have to eat a little bit of that contract if you're St. Louis, but you don't want to eat too much of it. You still want to get him off the roster for the start of the season because you want your young guys to have as much opportunity as they can to play every single day. You don't want to have an old head taking at bats when you know he's going to be playing elsewhere. So there has been an uptick in chatter over the last 24 hours, most notably with the Boston Red Sox. Now, the Red Sox, you might remember, already have Rafi Devers. They spent the money on Trevor Story a few years ago. Obviously, that didn't work out. They spent the money on Yoshida for the outfield. That didn't work out. But this is still a team on the rise. Plenty of young pitching. They addressed their starting rotation quite a bit this offseason, bringing in 3 starting pitchers. They addressed that bullpen as well. And now I think it's time for them to add a right-handed power hitter. Now, they had been connected to Alex Bregman, but this front office there was split as to how interested they really were in him. With that being said, maybe you want to go a shorter-term deal with Bregman. Sounds like Bregman wants a longer-term deal and is not going to be getting it from Boston. So if you're not going to get him on a short-term deal, who's left for you if you want to bring in a bat? I say bat because then a guy like Nolan Arenado, I think you could play at third base. However, because he's diminishing as a player as he gets older, maybe you play him over there at first. Maybe you play him at DH. But wherever you end up playing him, you need that right-handed bat in that lineup. Now, I think most fans in Boston were hoping something better than Nolan Arenado when you entered this offseason. Maybe you had pie-in-the-sky hopes of Juan Soto. That didn't happen. Maybe you were hoping for Alex Bregman. Doesn't look like it's going to happen. But maybe, just maybe, this could be the fit here for Nolan Arenado. I told you guys there wasn't really a team that was a fit, at least at the moment, say a week ago. Now we're starting to see some news start to begin to come out from John Paul Morosi about the Boston Red Sox. Katie Wu of The Athletic corroborates his reporting that the Boston Red Sox have at least had discussions with the St. Louis Cardinals, not just internal discussions amongst themselves. They've actually discussed a trade and what the framework might look like. So this deal could be done before spring training. It might happen during spring training, but this is the first positive headline around Nolan Arenado since the Houston Astros debacle about a month ago. So we'll see where he goes, but good to see him getting the ball rolling, at least for St. Louis and his own stake. Got to see what that contract looks like. They're already paying quite a bit to Story and Yoshida. If they bring in Arenado, I wonder if they try to offload one of those deals by getting a team to maybe eat the entirety of that contract by attaching a prospect to it, or if they get a team to just take the contract and eat, say, half of it and see what they could get for him. But either way, it sounds like Boston is finally getting serious about upgrading their lineup, and we'll see if we get this one across the finish line. Welcome in, everybody. Appreciate you guys joining us. Holly, Cowboys Nation, Ethan, VPC, ZX. Sorry, man, you didn't get your first spot again, but try again tomorrow. Try again. You just want to reclaim your first place throne. It's been a minute since you got there, my friend, so I don't really give too much advance notice when I do go live. I post the live. The YouTube notification goes out to you guys whenever I start up my software to do the live. And then I'll post it on Facebook and X and Blue Sky and wherever else I can post it. And during that period of time is when you guys start sending your messages. So VPC, ZX, I would just keep your notifications turned on to YouTube, because that's going to be the first place you'll get it if you're that serious about getting that notification there. Ethan, KD coming to Dallas cooking. It is a possibility, but I think it's also a possibility that he goes to Golden State, and it's also possible that they end up with Jimmy Butler and don't trade KD. Sean, Ryan Brazier to the Chicago Cubs. That was a deal we did see today. He was DFA'd by the Dodgers. We knew he would have some interest in the league, but there was some belief in the industry among several reporters out there that he might actually go through this entire thing unclaimed. Might wait until May to be able to sign a deal and just go into spring training and just not have a deal at that point. But Ryan Brazier is a good relief pitcher, kind of a middle reliever to me at this point. But the Chicago Cubs were looking for a reliever about at that price point for about what he gives you. Has the upside of a high leverage guy, but I think ideally for you, you're hoping that he plays the 6th, 7th inning role, and your bullpen holds up beyond that. Now, they made the addition of Ryan Presley. They made the addition of Kyle Tucker. To me, they still have a hole on that offense. We'll see how much money they're really willing to spend this offseason, because right now, I think they're about at their limit for what they were comfortable with coming into the offseason. If they're willing to go, say, $30-35 million for a short-term deal for Bregman, or say $29-30 million deal on a long-term deal for Bregman, then I'd rethink my division there for the Chicago Cubs. Because right now I still think it's going to be neck and neck between 4 different teams there, with the Brewers probably getting just a slight edge. But if they were to get an Alex Bregman, I think that puts them comfortably in top of that division. Maybe they'll make an addition at the trade deadline as far as additional starting pitching. They've already been connected to Dylan Cease. Those are just a few of the headlines to kind of keep an eye out for the Chicago Cubs. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Spam the hearts in the chat if you do appreciate it. If you're a Cubs fan, let's go ahead and see how many Cubs fans we got in here. Hit that 100. I want to see how many Cubs fans we've got in our chat. We need an NBA trade deadline talk, to be honest. We will actually have one of those tomorrow. I was hoping to do our afternoon live around the NBA talk and that kind of a thing, but that unfortunately didn't happen. Thank you, jury duty. But we will have one tomorrow. So NBA trade deadline talk tomorrow afternoon. Be ready for that one. Jonathan, welcome back. Willard, signed the contract already. I'm right there with you. So with that being said, let's get into the second headline of the day. What's holding up things here for Alex Bregman and Pete Alonso? Well, with Alex Bregman, it's a little bit of a mystery to me. Maybe he just doesn't like any of the contract offers that he has on the table, and he's just being stubborn about it. Okay, he has the right to be. However, if the contracts aren't getting any better, why are we twiddling our thumbs and just waiting for somebody to budge? Houston hasn't budged the entire offseason. Detroit is the only one over the last, say, 24 to 48 hours that it's at least considered the idea of going higher as far as their offer. Toronto seems pretty set in what they've been willing to offer him the entire offseason. Chicago Cubs entered the race late, but we've known what they're willing to offer for the better part of a week now. I don't see any movement here on Bregman. So I'm just wondering what the holdup actually is. And don't forget, there's a domino effect to this. Because Bregman's not signing a deal, there's several middle infield options that are not signing as well. So we're seeing a lot of those guys begin to sign at the very end of the free agent spectrum, guys that would get minor league deals. We saw the Rangers, for instance, sign 2 minor league contracts with Swaggerty and with Nick Ahmed, who won 2 Gold Gloves in his career. Both of those guys will be options in the minor leagues for the Texas Rangers, but I think it's mainly there to give them some depth, somebody to give some competition to some of the middle infield options that they already have on the Major League roster, not named Corey Seager or Marcus Semien, talking about Josh Smith, talking about Ezekiel Duran, talking about Justin Foscue, talking about Jonathan Ornelas. I think this is kind of the fallback option here if they trade some of those guys in addition, or in return for some starting pitching or a closer. That's also on the table. So some depth there for the Rangers. But as far as guys in that next tier that are waiting for them to go, that's kind of what's holding up things. Now, as far as Alonso, that's the one market that has been moving. And along with the New York Mets, other teams are also stepping up their offers from what I've heard. Now, we've talked about the Mets offer quite a bit over the last week. They started out 3 for 62, went to 3 for 66, now 3 for 70. I have not heard any news yet, this week anyway, that they've upped their offer from that point. Remember, they offered upped their offer twice last week, and it sounds like they're trying to get this deal done, if they were to get it done, before the start of spring training. So I wonder if he's held up a little bit here by Alex Bregman. Maybe the Mets think they can backdoor the Bregman negotiations. Who knows what's going on there? That could be a holdup as far as both of these guys are concerned. But for me, not really clear as far as what the holdup could be, especially on Bregman, because his market is so crystal clear. I think it's just him not liking the contracts that he's being offered, and maybe he's still got a good offer on the table. Maybe it's still better than the Willy Adames contract that he signed before the start of the winter meetings. Maybe all that can be true and still not be happy with the deal, especially after you saw the money Juan Soto goes for. So with all that being said, hopefully these guys come across the board soon. I mean, we're getting very close to the start of pitchers and catchers reporting. I think that starts next week. We will have spring training in right at about a week for a lot of teams as well. And then we'll get into our 30-team breakdown. Every single night we'll break down your favorite team, see what they did this offseason, what holes remain, what guys they're hoping step forward and kind of fill those spots in that rotation or in that lineup or in that bullpen, and kind of give you a prediction of where they could finish in that division, how the season could finish for them in the postseason if they get that far, and kind of see what other opportunities are out there for them. Finally, we'll give them a grade as far as how they did this offseason. I know it's still early. We have no idea how these signings are going to impact them or how these trades are going to work, and it's still not a complete roster for a lot of these teams. But at this point in the offseason, we can comfortably say the majority of the work has been done by most teams, with the exception of just a few. Talking about the Seattle Mariners, I think they still have a little bit they can do. I'm not sure how much more they will do, but I think they missed the opportunity to make some additions. When we get into our last segment of the show, we get into some of the worst contracts in Major League Baseball. You'll understand why the Mariners are so cash-strapped as far as the money that ownership was willing to allow them to spend this offseason. But there's a lot of names to kind of keep in mind whenever we get into some of those trade discussions, some of the worst contracts. But as far as our spring training videos, when we give you those grades, we're going to tell you what opportunities were missed and what opportunities they ultimately took advantage of and made them work out. So we'll see how things look as we get closer to spring training. But those are some things you guys can look forward to in the spring training segment of our show. All right, Willard, do you think the Astros get Bregman back in the end? Possibly, my friend. They are still in there. Ethan, the Astros are not out yet. But I would say that they are firmly on their offer of 6 for 156, and they will leave it on the table until he finally signs. Grizzlies interested in Alonzo Ball. I've heard several teams interested in Alonzo Ball. He's having a decent rebound season for him after missing much of the last 2 years or so with injury. Not exactly my top target for anybody. I know the Grizzlies would prefer Butler. Bill, welcome in. Hey, Mike, time for our daily update. Appreciate you joining us and for the kind words as well. Thank you very much. Willard, well, whatever teams gets him at the back end of his career, that is true. Cowboys Nation, who's this guy with the high and tight fade? Yeah, I mean, after jury duty, it was hot and so forth, so I just started shaving, and I'm like, the heck with it. I didn't like how my hair was looking today, so I cleaned it up a little bit. Rafe, D-backs cooked this offseason and still going to have to fight like hell for a wild card spot. True. I mean, the Dodgers are the prohibitive favorites for the World Series, but they got to go out there and win. But I'd imagine they're still going to win the division, even if they have issues with health, those kinds of things. Now, as far as the D-backs are concerned, I like the addition of Corbin Burnes for them. It kind of steps out to a position of need for them 1 year early. And notice that they didn't do it themselves. It was Burnes who reached out to them, and they took advantage of the situation and realized where they were. Hey, we have Merrill Kelly. Hey, we have Zach Gallen. We already spent money last year on Montgomery and Rodriguez, and neither one of those deals worked as well as we hoped. We don't really need to spend on you, Corbin Burnes. As much as you're interested in coming here, we'll hold off this time. That's something they could have said. Instead, they realized the mistakes that they made last year. The two deals did not work out. They've got two of their best pitchers, their aces anyway, going into free agency next year. So they took the opportunity here to solidify a position of need next year by jumping early and bringing in Corbin Burnes. Absolute win in my book, even if his numbers do show some decline. They needed some stability in that rotation for the future, and they got it there with Corbin Burnes. Now they don't necessarily have to overpay for either one of the other two starting pitchers. Instead, they get a very happy starting pitcher who's comfortable playing in Arizona. Good on them for doing so. Ethan, nice buzz cut. Thank you, my friend. I see you guys. No, there was not. No, there was not, Bill. Dodgers going to get some random prospect for Brazier who will turn out to, or somehow turn into a top 100 prospect next year, Nando. Fresh fade. Thank you, my friend. No, I don't think so. They're not going to get a prospect in this deal. Now, I know it says a player to be named later, but don't forget the second part of that, or cash considerations. With the way players have been dealt this offseason, players of his ilk, players that are DFA'd, usually when it gets to this stage, a player to be named later or cash considerations, almost always it turns into for cash considerations. It's hard to get a team to be willing to give up a prospect when all you have to give up is the cash, especially when you're considering a team like the Chicago Cubs, who already gave away a few prospects and may need to count on those prospects going forward if things don't work out in 25. So I would expect cash to be the ultimate return for Brazier there and the Dodgers. VPCZX on the show. My starting pitchers for Miami are Perez, Alcantara, Hendricks, Fried, Luzardo, and Caprellian, plus Cabrera. 7 starting pitchers deep. That is pretty good. Edward Cabrera, yes. Willard. Try to catch up with these. Welcome in, Verlis. Looks like the Astros might surprise people this season. The Astros had a problem at first base. True, they did finally correct the issue. That's not been a problem for just last year. That's been a problem for 3 years or so now. They tried Jose Abreu. That didn't work. The last years of Yuli Gurriel weren't very good either. John Singleton, not exactly a great performer there either. They finally get one of the better starting first basemen in the game right now. The best defensive first baseman in the game right now in Christian Walker, and they get him at a very good contract. I love the deal for the Astros. You know, I know I'm a Rangers fan, but I understand a good deal when I see one. And that Christian Walker deal was a stroke of genius for the Astros. Exactly what that clubhouse needed, exactly what that team needed, especially if they're going to be losing Alex Bregman in free agency. I would still expect him to go elsewhere. My prediction yesterday, if you missed our show anyway, was the Chicago Cubs. Had a very lengthy discussion about what teams are left on his market. If you guys want to check out that video, I encourage you to check that one out after we are done here tonight. But we discussed quite a bit as far as what's left for the Astros to do, how they don't want to go over the tax, and the only guy they're willing to do that for is Alex Bregman. We discussed the stance as far as the team, why they're so firm on that offer, and why other teams may ultimately have the best offer on the table for him, but how he might take the offer still with the Houston Astros based on the offers from the other clubs. Lot to get into, lot to unpack. I encourage you to check out that video, though, if you missed that discussion there. Tigers, so unlike last playoffs where Yordan Alvarez were playing on one leg, this time he won't be. Unlike the last year's playoffs, Astros got a legit first baseman who can handle, or who can hit and play defense. They do get an upgrade there at first base. Nobody's arguing that. But Alvarez does have bad knees. That's why I would consider him being a DH only this year. I see some Astros fans floating the idea of Alvarez playing left field if they signed Alex Bregman. No, that's not happening. They need to save his legs because I think he's just going to be an injury waiting to happen if they force him to play the field too much. VPCZX, I have to be on my phone and not laptop. I suppose so. That might help you get in there a little bit faster. Phones tend to be a little bit faster than laptops, at least to me, nowadays. Willard, and for that pitching, the Tigers can't play the bullpen the way they did last year. Now, I know the regulars, yeah. I'd still say the Tigers are a pretty good team. They made some really nice additions to that rotation this year, and I think they're going to still add another piece to that bullpen as well. Grizzlies want Alonso. Very true. I know you're our Chicago resident fan there, Sean, so hopefully you get something in a decent return there for Alonso because that contract has not looked good ever since he signed it. It just hasn't worked out there. It's just time for them to move on and see what they can get and salvage the situation. They finally were able to move on from Zach LaVine, though, in that 3-team deal with the Spurs and Kings. Like the Astros did the Braves in 23 by Yordan Alvarez destroying the Braves bullpen to sweep. Okay, we get it. Alvarez is a very good hitter. We got you, Willard. Caleb, I think the holdup is the Jays are offering a longer deal, and he's hoping one of the other teams increases the contract length. I would agree. I think the Jays probably have the best offer monetarily and lengthwise on the deal. We have confirmation that one of their offers on the table is at least 6 years in length with an opt-out after the first year. I'm sure they have other contract types on the table for him, say a lower AAV with a longer-term deal. I'm sure they have that option out there. I'm sure they have all kinds of variety of contracts saying, hey, Alex, which one of these do you like? And it's just a matter of him not necessarily liking the idea of playing in Toronto. He wants to see one of these other clubs step up, like the Houston Astros if they were to step up their offer, which they will not. Boston to really get in there, they will not. Detroit to up their offer, they have, in my opinion, upped their offer since the Flaherty situation there. Several reports anyway indicated that they are now emboldened to try to sign him to a deal, and might have even ratcheted up their offer. I'm sure they did at least a little bit to see if they could get him across the finish line, but it sounds like it wasn't enough because he's not signed to a deal yet. Maybe we'll be surprised in the middle of our broadcast and he goes somewhere else. You think the Astros going to do the Tigers after they flexed in Houston? I don't know. I think both teams are very good, but I think both teams are more wild card contenders this year. I don't think either team is necessarily a favorite to get to the World Series, but I think both of them could get there based on how good their rosters are. I just think there are other teams that are a little bit better than either the Tigers or the Astros. Sean, Dana Brown said that they lost Bregman. He did say that in the early points of the offseason, but as far as the conversation that's been around him so far, he did not expect to sign Alex Bregman even right now. He said that while the door is always open for a reunion, they have a standing offer to him, but they're not actively negotiating with him anymore. Remember, it was about 3 weeks ago when Bregman reached out to the Houston Astros once again to reignite conversations there. You know what the result of that was? Buckus. Literally nothing. They couldn't get that offer up any more than what it was a couple of months ago. And I think if he was going to go back at that offer, he would have done so by now. And it's just not happening. Tells me he's going to take the offer from another club for no other reason than it's a better offer, but also to save face because the Houston Astros just are not willing to budge based off of his history with the team, etc. And at a certain point, a player's pride does get wounded when you don't get offered by a team you played all those years for. We just saw the Luka Doncic press conference out there in LA after being traded from the Dallas Mavericks. You can tell he's more than a little hurt. Let's just say he looked like a broken man still on that podium there. Still had his Luka moments, had that little chuckle that he has sometimes, kind of that dry humor. But you could tell he definitely was still going through it. And there was a couple of clips that I saw of him that he looked like he wasn't even there in his own head whenever they were interviewing, asking Pelinka a question while he was there on the stand as well. So hope Luka has a great career out there in LA. I will be cheering for him. Gives me a reason to cheer for the Lakers because I love Luka Doncic. Even though I am a Mavericks fan, I will, as one of the greatest players in Mavericks history, probably one of the top three. I'd probably put Dirk as my clear number one. Doncic probably could have gotten above him at some point, but that we will never know anymore. AD is also in that top three now, most talented players that have ever been on the Mavericks. Jason Kidd was in that group. Steve Nash is in that group as well. But Dirk Nowitzki is very solidly at the top of that mountain now. But as far as Bregman goes, once that connection with the team is severed, or at least is affected, it can make it very difficult to go back to that situation. Luka didn't have a choice. It wasn't like he could have re-signed there in free agency, even though they had, say if they had cut him for whatever reason. He wouldn't have been able to go back to the Mavericks because they traded him. Bregman, however, his situation to try to save face would be to get a higher offer from the Houston Astros. That ain't happening, which is why I don't think it's going to be the Astros that win the conversation or win the bidding for him. Cubby, welcome in. Appreciate you joining us. Brazier over Robertson makes it hard to think the Cubs are conserving cash for Breggs. Wait should soon be over. That's kind of my thoughts as well. I do think that they needed to upgrade the bullpen first and foremost. Do I think they could still add Robertson and do Bregman? I do believe so. I think they're all in on 2025. However, money has been a little bit of a conversation point around the Cubs this offseason. If they're truly all in, then why are we waiting here, hemming and hawing about a few $1 million? Get the contract signed. And I think we will see him sign well in advance of spring training. We're about a week and change away from almost every team's spring training starting. So hopefully we'll have some resolution fairly soon. If we are off, during the rest of this week and a Bregman deal does come through, we'll go ahead and go live for you. So be sure to join us and hit that like and subscribe on the video. Let me see, Cubs fans, I asked you guys to hit that 100. Let me see those hundreds if you think he's going to go to the Chicago Cubs. Astros fans, Willard, if you think he's going to go to Houston, hit those hearts in the chat. Let's see here. Yeah, he's definitely going to the Cubs, very possibly. Willard in the playoffs with the Tigers, same thing they heard. Ace pitcher. They ain't lit up by Walker, Alvarez, Altuve, Paredes. Astros do have a good lineup, I will say that. Is it as good as it was in the height of their World Series runs? No, but it is still a very good offense. Diaz is a very underrated piece, like you mentioned there, Willard. But I would say they're a good lineup, but they're not as good as they used to be. But they should still be considered a very potent group, even with Altuve aging, even with Walker being an older player. He's still one of the best first basemen in the game. How much longer will he be? I don't think really matters because of the short-term deal that they were able to get him for. Welcome in, Aiden. Appreciate you joining us. Bill, Alonso is greedy? I don't necessarily think so, Bill. The reason why I say that is because I think Scott Boras is actually right. I think the market for him is actually better than what the Mets are willing to offer. I think the market for a first baseman of his caliber is well over the $22 million offer that they had on the table just at the beginning of last week. I think that was a little bit of a slap in the face, honestly, to Pete Alonso, an insulting offer. I think the reason why they were that low is because they didn't expect him to sign it and thought he would go ahead and move on to a different team. I think he just wants to be a member of the New York Mets so badly that even after being insulted like that and that back and forth, round and around thing that they've been going through over the past week with Cohen, with Alonso, and with Boras, I think this is all just a big song and dance, and eventually they will get to a conclusion there and sign him to a deal that's still team-friendly, but a lot closer to what he's worth in free agency. I think Boras was right when he said that why are we playing these Mickey Mouse games and not even offering a competitive offer? Saying that he has issues defensively, okay, so what? He's still the best power hitter that you would have on your team outside of Juan Soto. I think that they need the power on that lineup, and while they're a better team with Juan Soto, they're only marginally better overall based on the improvements that they've made to this team. Having Pete Alonso there, having the improvement in that lineup of Juan Soto, makes them a significantly more improved team with a real chance to push the Los Angeles Dodgers for a World Series. So there is some posturing, I do believe, on the New York Mets side, but while Alonso is definitely more expensive than, say, Nathaniel Lowe, for instance, he's earned the right to be. He's carried that team and still has one of the best power bats in the game. Now, does he have limitations? No question. Kind of compare this to the Luka trade again. The limitations Luka has as far as conditioning, availability, those kinds of things. He's still a top 4 player in the NBA, even with those issues. That was kind of the issue I had with the trade as far as the pure asset management of it. Applying that logic here to Pete Alonso, even with the issues and limitations of Pete Alonso, he's still one of the best, 2 or 3, maybe 4 power hitters in the game, and he deserves to be paid as such. So kind of keep that in mind as far as contract negotiations. Now, also understand that first base DH guys usually do not get paid, especially if they're a defensive liability. But if you are an elite hitter, the way Pete Alonso is, the one attribute that he really excels more than most is that power. He struggles with contact rate, we know that. Struggles with grounding out into double plays, we know that as well. But that power is prodigious, and I would like to see him get a fair contract from the New York Mets. I'm not saying it needs to reset the entire first base market like he's hoping for, like Boras is hoping to do in order to reset the market a year ahead of Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s contract. That's also on the mind for Scott Boras, but I do think he deserves a legitimate deal. Alrighty, Jays aren't getting Alonso or Bregman, or else they would have signed him by now. It's kind of my thoughts as well. I think that the Jays all along have had the best offer to a ton of different free agents this offseason, and finally were able to get one done with Anthony Santander. They were able to get Max Scherzer. They were able to trade for Jimenez, even though I think that one was one of the worst trades we've seen in Major League Baseball this entire offseason. I think that set the organization back there in Toronto. I think they did it with the thought process there that, hey, we want to try to compete, have some experience there at second base, and so they make the trade for Jimenez, and meanwhile bail out the Guardians of that the salary commitments there. Guardians, meanwhile, don't have much salary on their books going forward. The Blue Jays basically took off all the bad contracts that they had on their books. Miles Straw and Chris Jimenez. We'll see what that turns into there. Sean, if the Cubs get Bregman, they should be favorites in the NL Central. That's my thought process there as well. Reportedly, the Cubs have offered 4 for $100 with multiple opt-outs. Yikes. Looking at 6 for 156, I would say that offer is better than 4 for 100. I did not see anywhere a 4 for 100 offer. If you could send us that information, Cubby, I'd love to hear it. But if I'm the Cubs, there's no way he's accepting that offer when he has 6 for 156, a higher AAV already on the table from the Houston Astros. Texas is a no-tax state as well, something to take into consideration. And he's already played in Texas, played in Houston. He already has a home there. So why are we worried too much about that part of it? And you're not willing to beat the Astros offer? Tells me the Cubs, if that's really the offer, then maybe they aren't quite as serious as we all expect them to be. But I've heard reports already that they have 6 years on the table to him with an opt-out after the first year. But we'll see what the value is there. Tim Hill was a value signing. He was. I was kind of the lefty reliever that I was waiting for the Yankees to sign all offseason long. I thought Chafin was in that category as well. But 1 year, $2.5 million for Tim Hill, not too bad of a deal either. Holly, how was jury duty? Long and a lot of wasted time. They did a really nice job improving the signing in process of everybody. That process was done seconds. And then we waste another hour waiting for them to figure out what they want to do. Another hour while everybody tries to figure out how to use the restroom and how to get back in their own seats. And then just that process just continued all day long. Actual time in the courtroom, maybe 3 hours out of 8 or 9 hours I was there today. It was brutal. Alex, welcome in. Michael, appreciate you joining us. What's the holdup for other free agents signing? The top end guys, I think it's the Bregman and Alonzo markets there. The low end guys, the guys that are going to sign minor league deals, roster invites, those guys are starting to move off the board. No holdup there. Let's see here. Cubs offer 4 for 120. That sounds a lot more like it there. 4 for 120 would put the AAV around $30 million. That would beat the Houston Astros offer. So that makes a little bit more sense there, Michael. Let's see here. Rod. Let's see here. There's my screen jumps on me. Almost forgot Alonso and Bregman coming to the Jays. I moved on from it. I don't think it's going to happen at this point. I'd love to see them be able to bring in one of those guys. I think the most likely out of those two would probably be Alonso if the Mets never bring up their offer. But if they do, then he goes back to the Mets. Bregman, I just don't think he wants to play in Toronto, even though I think they have the best offer on the table. I still think he ends up with the Cubs. Again, if you guys missed our live from last night, check it out after our live for kind of all the different teams that are in on Bregman, in on Alonso. We went team by team, kind of broke down why they're in, how much they're at, and how much sense it would make for him to go there. And then we predicted where both of those guys would go. Let's see here. Last report was Cubs end up paying $2.5 million on Brazier. Kind of surprising there. I didn't see the money held on that one, but we'll check that one out. If they did give up $2.5 million, or if the Dodgers are paying $2.5 million on it, good on them to at least save themselves $2 million anyway, because he was a $4.5 million player. So if the Cubs are paying $2.5, that means it's going to save the Dodgers about $2 million. So when you consider the taxes on that, that's going to save them a fair chunk of money. Bill, looking at Mike, I don't want to be a defendant on a trial you sat on. I bet he went away for the max. This was after the trial. I just couldn't stand it anymore. I was just looking in the mirror, and I just couldn't stand how disheveled I looked with my hair. So, zoom, it went. Let's see here. I am pretty stern, though, when it comes to law and order stuff. So, let's see here. Sean, Butler may finally accept a trade to someone other than Phoenix. I don't think he has the right to do so. The only two players in the league who have no trade clauses are Bradley Beal and LeBron James, which is why if LeBron wanted out of LA after AD was traded, he basically could have forced the Lakers' hand. Meanwhile, Bradley Beal can force the Phoenix Suns' hand if he doesn't want to be dealt, and if they want to bring in Jimmy Butler, they're going to have to trade KD or Devin Booker to get that done. That ain't happening with the pursuit of bringing in Jimmy Butler. So that's why the KD rumors have kicked up, because if you're not going to get Jimmy Butler because Beal won't move, then why are we still sitting here? Kevin Durant's going to try to win. He's 36 years old. So Golden State comes to mind, Houston Rockets come to mind, Dallas Mavericks come to mind as far as teams that could try to pursue him with only a couple of days left until the deadline there. By the way, if Bregman re-signed with Bregman and Pena and Walker and Altuve, best infield in baseball, Altuve's not a great second baseman anymore, and I would say, as far as the infield goes, I think that Paredes would be a better infielder for them at second base. But I think as far as the decision there, it's going to be about how many at-bats they can squeeze for Altuve at DH, how many at-bats they can give to Alvarez out in the outfield, even with his knee issues. It just doesn't fit as far as a roster construction standpoint anyway. He doesn't seem like a Toronto guy. Maybe. I do want to get to the super chat here. Steven, I did see that one come through. Thank you very much for that. I know you guys, when you guys do support our channel like this, I just want to take a moment and say thank you. Steven, I know you've sent us a super chat before, so thank you once again, my friend. It's really nice when you guys do that. So I just want to take a moment here and just say thank you for doing that. Jonathan, I know you've done it before. I know several of you guys have. I just want to thank you guys once again for doing it. But for your comment here, watched almost every Mets game last season. Alonso was the reason the Mets almost missed the playoffs. He came up small in almost every key at bat. I'm not going to argue whether or not he was having flaws towards the end of the season for the Mets. But now you're going to have a better lineup overall with Juan Soto. You're going to still have the runner-up in the MVP discussion in Francisco Lindor. But the marginal improvements that you have by having Juan Soto in there, I say marginal, a little bit better than marginal by having Soto in there over Alonso, would be even more magnified, even bigger improvements if you kept Alonso and added Juan Soto to that mix. That's kind of my point there, is that while Soto is a definite improvement over Alonso, why do we even need to worry about it being an improvement over Alonso? Bring them both back, and you still have the flexibility of Cohen's money to go after Vladdy next year. And I get the negative limitations defensively. I get the bad strikeouts. I get the grounding into a double play. I get all that, contact rate, etc. But you need some more reliability as far as power in that lineup. Say you miss Juan Soto, he pulls a hammy in April, and he's out for a month. Then you don't have your big cog in your lineup, and you're relying on Francisco Lindor. And while you still have a good team around him, no one, I think, in this chat would argue that having Pete Alonso to at least keep this offense afloat, to where you might be able to carry the offense for 3-4 days in a week when the rest of the team doesn't have it, you finish a game 2-1 as opposed to losing 1-0. That's kind of the difference I'm seeing here for Pete Alonso. Am I saying he's going to be the difference maker for them in the playoffs? No. Am I saying he's going to be the difference maker from them from getting into the postseason or not? No. But I am saying he might be the difference from them having enough to get over the top of the Dodgers versus just having enough to compete with the Dodgers. That's kind of my point there. Or falling short of being able to compete with the Dodgers. While they're a better team with Juan Soto, I don't think there's any question about that. I think they'd be even better with having Pete Alonso on that lineup as well. So that's kind of my thoughts there, Steven. Do I think Alonso's a perfect player? No. I think he's a very flawed player. But the one talent he does bring is that he can change the game in one swing. And he's probably one of the best 4 or 5 hitters in the game that can do that with power. Now, offensively, I think there are much better weapons, all around baseball. Corey Seager, Yordan Alvarez, Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, Aaron Judge, several other hitters I could name that are better all-around hitters. But as far as power, he is certainly one of the top 4 in my mind. All right, let me get back up to some of these chats. I want to try to get to as many of these guys chats as I can. Bill, the Phoenix Suns look like they're going to be bad. If they do trade for Butler, that team is old. They were already old. I thought that they had a 2-year window when they made the trade for KD. That 2 window, shut. I don't think they have a prayer to win the title this year, and I think it's just a slow, winding trail down until they finally realize it themselves, at which point KD doesn't have any trade value unless they trade him right now. I would look to try to trade Booker at some point down the line, but he is their franchise superstar. Maybe he'll be a career Sun, but after trading Luka, who knows anymore? I mean, even Anthony Edwards made a joke about he's scared right now about the possibility of being traded before the trade deadline. I doubt he would be on the move. But I think every single one of us would have said Luka would 100% stay with the Mavericks at least through the end of the season, and that did not happen. Alex, what's the holdup on the other free agent signing? That's kind of what we just discussed anyway, how that things are at the top of the market are held up by Bregman and Alonzo, but the lower-level guys are able to sign right now. We saw several of them sign today. Randall Grichuk goes to the Diamondbacks. We saw Hill go to the Yankees. Laureano goes to the Orioles. That's the 3rd outfielder the Orioles have added so far this offseason, by the way. O'Neill is probably going to be your starter out there at in one of the outfield spots. Carlson is one of the outfielders they signed. It sounds like he could begin the season at AAA, along with Hurstad. A little bit surprising that they force him down, but that looks like what it's going to happen right now, and maybe he'd be the trade piece at the deadline for another starting pitcher, an ace-level starter there. But Laureano sounds like he's going to be the 4th outfielder there in Baltimore. We talked a little bit about Arenado and the Red Sox, the rumors there. Guardians added some more pitching depth with Vince Velasquez. Did not pitch at all last year due to injury, but he is back with the Guardians, and they're going to need some depth there. They have had injury issues over the last couple of years. You never know with Shane Bieber, etc. So they bring in Vince Velasquez, another injury guy, but at a certain point, maybe one of those guys will stay healthy enough for you. VPCZX, would you like to see NA take on a fifth league in lacrosse? No idea, my friend. I am not a lacrosse guy. Let's see here. Welcome in, Master Vin Man. Appreciate you joining us. Sean, will John Morant ever get another star to join him in Memphis? Probably not. I mean, it's Memphis. I've been to Memphis. Not to say that it doesn't have its attributes, but it's a rough town. There's been more than a few affiliations with the Grizzlies team and some of the local issues. That's kind of why John Morant had to take some time away from the team as well, because of those issues of association. Is it a great situation for an NBA player to be in? Probably not. You have to have a certain mentality. Their best years came when they were the rough grindhouse team with Zach Randolph and Marc Gasol and others, Tony Allen. They have Marcus Smart there, kind of fits that mold. But if you're saying a player like, say, Luka went to Memphis, I'm not even sure he would be able to go well in Memphis. It's just a tough town. It's seen better days and needs some revitalization. I will say that much. Let's see here. Willard, hold up. Jim Jackson with the Dallas in the 90s before his injury was a talented guard. He was. They had Jamal Mashburn as well. They were a good team. Mark Aguirre played there. Rolando Blackman. But as far as best players in Mavs history, Dirk to me is clearly one. AD, as far as most talented, would be in that discussion. Luka Doncic, obviously, but we'll never know how it will turn out with Luka now that he is off the club. Let's see here. Master Vinman, Cubs report on the 9th due to the LA series in Japan. Yes, the teams that do play early will get to report a little bit earlier than the other clubs. Cowboys Nation, they can't keep trash cans on the dugout anymore. Michael, welcome in. Jesse Winker, yes, he did go to the Mets. Bill, I think Boris is one of acting like as a puppet master and Cohen doesn't like it and is determined to teach him a lesson. I don't know about that. I think Boris, while he gets a bad rap for, kind of waiting and trying to get the best number he can, which is what he's supposed to do, by the way, as an agent, is to do the best for his player. He doesn't have to care about your favorite team. He only has to do the bidding of what the player wants to do. In case you guys are wondering, who's Scott Boris's employer? Who hires and fires Scott Boris? That's the players. If the players didn't like what he was doing, he would not be the number one, let me restate that, the number one agent in Major League Baseball. And it's not questionable at all. He is the number one agent in professional baseball. So keep that in mind when you guys say negative things about Scott Boris, how he does this, how he does that. Guess who he is doing it on behalf of? The players. So while you're hoping he does sign this player or that player, or how you think he's bending the player to his will, like some evil overlord or witch doctor or whatever. No, it's the other way around. The player tells Scott Boris what he wants to do. So if Pete Alonso wanted to sign today a 3-year deal for $62 million, he could easily do that. If Bregman wanted to sign the 6-year deal for $156, he could do that. It's up to the player to ultimately to make the decision. The agent argues and tries to negotiate on his behalf so that he does not have to. So that's kind of why you pay the agent, to help you get the most money. And if you keep hearing that other teams are still in the mix here, you can understand why a player who isn't familiar with the process of going through free agency, the first time really going through it, they want to maximize their value. So while we might be upset that they take their time, we might be upset as far as how Scott Boris makes it look from the outside looking in. We might be upset as far as how it makes our team look when we get to the regular season, how it affected Jordan Montgomery last year, how it affected Blake Snell. Guess what? Jordan Montgomery could have taken a team-friendly contract from the Texas Rangers at any point last offseason. That offer never even got on the table. So instead of, making a decision and saying, hey, I guess Texas is just not going to offer it, I should just go on and try to sign elsewhere, when he had more lucrative offers early in the offseason, ultimately, he had to settle for the offer from the Arizona Diamondbacks. For Blake Snell, same kind of thing. He chose to wait that long. Sure, it's Scott Boras continually trying to get the best contract offer out there. And he does get a rap for doing that and going that far with players. But guess what? The players have to be comfortable going that far as well. So kind of keep that in mind when you guys slander Scott Boras. Not trying to defend Scott Boras too much, but I'm just trying to defend agents in general. They do the bidding of the players. The commissioner does the bidding of the teams. Keep that in mind for years going forward. All right, Willard, Astros gets like Astros get flake. Why get flack? Why not go to Boston after screwing the Astros in 18, Dodgers in 18? And I hear nothing against it. All I ask is you're going to give Astros at least give same beef with Red Sox. As far as the what was it? The Apple Watch thing? Is that what you're trying to say? I mean, I don't really care about the trash can thing at this point anymore. Cheating is cheating. Do I care about whether or not it affected the game on the field? Absolutely. But to the extent that we're still talking about it all these years later, I think we all need to move on and realize, yes, it happened, but it's time to move on as a sport. Same thing with the steroid era in baseball. I think Major League Baseball should recognize it, put some type of a plaque in front of the Hall of Fame for that era of the game and say, hey, during this time, we knew that this was a problem in the game. This problem was addressed by the drug policy that came into place in 2004, whatever the drug policy, whenever that came into place. After that policy was in place, the game was much better, and records were restored to being as impactful as they ever had been. But during this period of time, baseball was still being played, and players still need to be honored from that time period. There's no idea of knowing who was and who wasn't using, who was affected by the players who were using, and who wasn't affected by the players who were using, because there's no way to tell who was and was not affected, both positively or negatively, by those PEDs. So when you put that plaque there, does it put a whole damper on the entire Hall of Fame? No. It says that this thing happened in Major League Baseball. It's part of our history, and we've gotten better for it. We recognize the mistakes. We recognize the mistakes of gambling with the whole Black Sox scandal, with Pete Rose, now with the umpire, Pat Hoberg. And so we take it very seriously nowadays. So very rarely do we have instances of gambling issues in the game, and when we do get those, even if there's no actual evidence of a bet being placed by Pat Hoberg, just the presence of impropriety there is why we're letting him go. Because he didn't comply with the investigation into its fullest extent. Because he deleted the text messages. We take these issues very seriously. Show how the game has grown. Now you can do the same thing for PEDs and move the conversation forward. So thank you, Willard, for kind of bringing that one up as far as the banging on trash can thing or the Apple Watch thing or whatever it was from the Boston Red Sox. Anyway, I just think teams need to, or the fan bases need to move on from those types of issues and recognize that bad things happen during the sport, and we need to recognize that they happen, but also be able to honor things that happened during that period of time because it still happened. It's a matter of record at this point, so kind of keep that in mind that every time we give your team flack, for instance, about the trash cans, they still did a great job and win. That's what they did. Now, as far as the Red Sox as well, the Pete Rose, etc., we can still honor the player because, again, that gambling thing happened while he was a manager. I can't remember if he was a manager player at that time or not, but anyway, he was still a great player, one of the all-time hits leaders in the game. We can still honor the player as far as I'm concerned. Just kind of have just like for the PEDs, say with the Black Sox scandal and throughout Major League Baseball, while we don't recognize or we don't condone gambling at any point, we recognize that they no longer have an impact on the field of baseball. And so we still recognize that he had an impact on the game up until that point and throughout that period of time, whatever that period of time might have been, and they still deserve to be honored and recognized for that period of time and recognized for their successes on the baseball field. So do I think that they're great people for doing the mistakes that they made? No. I mean, I think cheating is cheating. Would I view them the same way? No. But I would say that there are levels to this. Do we view Ichiro Suzuki the same way we view, say, other outfield guys that got into the Hall of Fame? No. We view Ichiro Suzuki as a very different player, one of the most accomplished players ever. Just kind of do a more recent example. Let's say Mariano Rivera and Billy Wagner. I think we all can recognize that Mariano Rivera is one of the greatest closers, if not, well, I take that back. He is the greatest closer ever in Major League Baseball history. But there is levels to this. Billy Wagner is still one of the greatest closers in MLB history. And for me, pitch for pitch, he's probably the second best closer ever in Major League Baseball history. Some of you might not like his short sample size. Some of you might have issues with his small sample size in the postseason, his struggles in the postseason. You are welcome to that opinion. But I think we can all agree that Mariano Rivera is a better closer. But we can still agree now that while you may view Billy Wagner as, say, the second, third, or fourth best closer, he's one of the best ever to do it and deserves his day in the sun in the Hall of Fame. So Houston, I believe, is retiring his number as well. I saw a headline anyway that Walker is changing his number in order to kind of accommodate that. Good on him for doing so. But I would say that these issues in baseball that we've been dealing with for decades now, just like baseball finally upgraded the play on the field, making the bases bigger, pitch clock, all those kinds of things, we can renovate some of those other things as far as the Baseball Hall of Fame. And by the way, Baseball Hall of Fame is a museum. Just kind of keep that in mind. It's a museum. What do museums do? They tell you the history of what happened. They don't try to sugarcoat things. They tell you what happened, who did it, what was great, what was not so great. That's the purpose of a museum. So kind of keep that in mind when you guys, vote for who should be in the Hall of Fame and who should not be in the Hall of Fame. Were they a truly great player? Were they one of the top 1% of 1% of 1% players ever? Maybe. Maybe they're in that class with Mariano Rivera. Maybe they're the greatest to ever do it. But they still may be in the Hall of Fame because they were one of the best 1% of Major League Baseball's players ever, like a Billy Wagner, like a Trevor Hoffman. Those guys still deserve their day in the sun and be recognized as Hall of Famer. It is not a club of just one team. We're not taking one closer and saying, we've already found the greatest closer ever. Nobody else ever can get in because nobody can measure up to Mariano Rivera. That's not how this works. We can still honor all the great players that have come before and still honor them with the Hall of Fame. So anyway, kind of got off on a tangent there. Appreciate you guys kind of bearing with me on that one. Master Vinman, PECOTA came out with their projections and have the Cubs ranked a little too high in my opinion. I don't necessarily look at the PECOTA rankings too much. For me, they're just too all over the place. I think they kind of average their results a little bit too much. I think they try to mitigate risk in their predictions a little too much for me. For instance, on the American League side, they have the Yankees winning 89.7 games and the Rangers winning 89.3 games. I mean, at a certain point, you have to realize that there's going to be some 95-game winners on the American League side. Instead of just saying, hey, while we think they could get to 95 games, we also think they could win around 85. So we're going to take the average of it and say they get around 89. Instead of doing that, let's stick to our guns here. Let's realize that the Yankees are a very good team and should be around 95 to 97, maybe even 99 wins. I think they'll be a better 162-game season team. I think they might even get to 100 wins, even in a very difficult AL East. Now, there are teams that are going to be finishing very low in the standings. For instance, the Chicago White Sox. I think they finished something like, 40-ish games they won last year. There's going to be a significant improvement from them. Even a 17-game improvement would still put them in the 60-win mark, right around there anyway. But PECOTA, I think, still doesn't take even the low end of those things into account as well. I think they try to hedge their bets a little bit too much and try to average things a little too much. So, again, I don't really pay attention to them, but it gives you a good outline of where the thought process is anyway as far as what they look like on paper. Gives you at least a way to quantify what they look like in the division. Do I think I'd use it for anything other than that? Probably not. All right, let's try to catch up on a few of these comments. Willard, plus the way 2022 season, Houston destroyed Yankees, swept and beat Philly in the World Series. Again, we get it. The Houston Astros are a good team, but they're no longer that same team anymore. Bill, Mike, you knew Elvis, you'd be the new Elvis in Memphis, strumming that old guitar. Yeah, they actually have a really cool theater. I went there to see a play long time ago. It was all decked out in gold anyway. Back in the day, I made a trip 7 hours just to go watch a play there. One that I'd been watching, one that I'd been listening to ever since high school, and I never knew what the play was about. I had a good idea it was, what it was generally about, but I had no idea what the activity was. But my coach anyway at the time, every single tournament we went to, going to the tournament, we listened to the play. Coming back, or to the hotel, listen to the play. Going back to the tournament the next day, listen to the play. Coming back home, we listened to the play. For 4 years, 2 days a week, I listened to that constantly. And I'd never seen it. So finally I saw that it was at least coming sort of close to us. So I went and to go see the play, and mind-blowing. Still the best performance of the play I've ever seen. I'll give you a hint. If you guys can guess what that play was, you should be able to based off of this clue. It was recently developed into a movie, and it has a second part coming out this year. There's your clue. Alrighty. Will the big name player ever end up with Ja in Memphis? No, Sean. They will not. Otani. Pete was just managing. Thank you. Bill, Mike's first signal, Texas baseball cowboy. I like that one. Alrighty, let's get into the final part of my show that I teased for you at the beginning. Some of the worst contracts in Major League Baseball. So I know you guys all realize that every team has some level of bad contracts, but you might not realize how detrimental they might be to your favorite team adding a player. So I wanted to touch on this just a little bit before we head off for the evening. Looking at the Seattle Mariners. Remember, Seattle famously said $15 million is all you got to be able to work with this offseason. Figure it out, Seattle front office. Figure it out, Jerry DiPoto. We ain't giving you a dime more. And understandably, Mariners fans were upset. Oh, why don't we have any money? Why is our ownership so out to get us? Why don't they want to invest in this team with the best rotation we've ever had? Hold on. I realize that $15 million doesn't sound like a lot. And yes, they don't have a very high payroll either. But let's look at their contracts. What are two contracts that they have on their books that are just eating them alive? First, Mitch Garver. He was great during the run with the Texas Rangers to get to the World Series and win it. He obviously has not been worth anything since he's been in Seattle. Then you look at the trade for Robbie Ray anyway. He got traded to the San Francisco Giants, and you took back, I believe, Mitch Haniger in that deal. Between those two players, they both have 1 year left on their deal. They're making $28 million. You wonder where your budget is, Seattle? Those are the two players that you had hoped would be better on your roster, that would be making a difference for you in that lineup. And I do think they could have resurgent years. You're darn near going to have to count on it if you're going to expect a better offensive production from that Mariners team. But that's where the issues come from. Gives you a good idea of what this team looks like for Seattle and why they have the issues that they have. It's not just that the ownership didn't give them much money to spend this offseason. It's that the money they've spent isn't working for them. So kind of keep that in mind for why they're in a poor situation. Hank, welcome in. Nice haircut. Thank you. Appreciate that. No matter what, there's always an upside, Sports Network. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate you joining us once again. One other team I wanted to touch on here before we get into the rest of these is the Cleveland Guardians. You look at the way they have to operate as a team. They can't really give out any long-term contracts. And if they give out a bad one, they're darn near hampered from anything they can do from adding any free agents, 1 year, 2 year deals. They're even limited as far as those. So you look at the deals that they made this offseason. The deal that they sent Chris Jimenez to the Toronto Blue Jays, along with Miles Straw in a separate deal that included some bonus pool money. Just incredible deals that the Blue Jays were the team that was, that wanted him. They gave up so much in return for him as well. I mean, a negative 26 value according to baseball trade values. They gave up a 20 value piece in Horowitz to get it done. Just does not make sense to me. I get they got a prospect in the deal as well, but they also sent one back to Cleveland in that deal as well. I mean, at a certain point, you have to realize it was not a smart decision. But let's get back to the point here. The Guardians had two bad contracts on their books. They have one other player that's in a negative value on their books, but it's nowhere near the value of what Jimenez and Straw were. And they got off of both of those deals and got great value in return. Again, they couldn't really spend in free agency, but now because they cleared up the money for Jimenez, they were already spending about the same amount on Naylor. They trade him away and bring in Carlos Santana. They spend a little bit of money on Shane Bieber, bringing him back. And that's kind of how the Guardians were able to keep this thing afloat. Now, they were looking to do bigger things this offseason, guarantee you that. I'm sure they had their toe in a lot of different pools out there, maybe even the Kyle Tucker pool. I heard the Guardians early on in his trade candidacy as a team that might be looking to make a big upgrade to go all in on 2025. That was the thought process there anyway. That didn't happen, obviously, and they decided to pivot. They trade away Naylor, bring in a player who's at least comparable from a WAR perspective. A little bit better defensively than Naylor, less effective offensively than what Naylor brings. But in all, I think it'll be a wash, offense and defense. I think they'll miss the thump in the lineup Naylor brings. I think that offense is going to be a little bit worse. I think the pitching staff will be a little bit better because of the healthy returns of some of their staff. But you kind of see how the negative contracts really affected how the Guardians use their payroll. They couldn't go out there and sign another, $16 million option at first base to make a difference for them and keep Naylor. or move Naylor over to DH and bring in that first baseman, or go to the outfield and make a signing in the outfield for, say, a Jurickson Profar type. They couldn't even afford that before they made the move to trade away Jimenez. So kind of keep that in mind as far as how negative contracts really affect you. So we'll kind of run through a few of these. We'll look at Detroit because they're looking at Alex Bregman, kind of tie this in with that conversation. They have 3 years left of Javi Baez. Look at how badly the contracts went for Baez, how badly it went for Jordan Montgomery, how badly it went towards the end with Miguel Cabrera. They're stuck with Baez for another 3 years. So when you're wondering, hey, Detroit fans, why are we not spending and bringing in Alex Bregman? We need a player like this. Well, that's the reason why you want to go short-term deals, because you're gun-shy after having a bad contract after bad contract go sour on you. Those are the kind of issues there. Bill, kind of like my family with 7 brides for 7 brothers. Our parents got all 8 of us kids to watch it at 4 a.m. We had a family tradition. Yeah, I mean, the repetition and so forth. What's the other one I'm thinking of? My dad's birthday, just mentioned that one the other day during our live. Kind of repetition on that one. Every year, his birthday's on Groundhog's Day. What's the one movie I think everybody watches on Groundhog's Day? Groundhog's Day with Bill Murray. Not saying that it's a bad thing. I like the movie. But just kind of the repetition. I wanted to finally be able to see it. But in case you guys are wondering what that play was, it was wicked. All right, so let's kind of get back to this discussion here. Other players that are left as far as bad contracts. Boston, you kind of wonder about the reason why they're going short-term with their offers for Bregman as well. Or at least that's the rumors anyway. Earlier this offseason, they have Story, who they took a flyer on after he wasn't able to sign in that class of mega free agent of shortstops with Seager and Simeon, among others. I'm trying to remember if that was the offseason or was it the offseason with Swanson. Either way, it was that offseason where he was the shortstop left without a deal. He signed late in free agency with the Red Sox, a 6-year deal. He's got 3 years left on that one. So does Yoshida. They don't have a lot of long-term money that the Red Sox are willing to spend, even though Red Sox fans are used to them spending at much higher payrolls whenever they had Manny Ramirez and David Ortiz and that group of players. Now they've gone kind of the A's and Rays way of building a team, and not saying that it's worked out horribly, but I'm saying it's nowhere near what we expected out of the Red Sox from a spending perspective, from a competition standpoint on the field. It's a very different Red Sox team that I would like to see them get back to spending some money here. But you look at Yoshida and Story, you can understand why they might not be able to spend on Bregman first, and why they might force the Cardinals to eat a little bit of money on Arenado. Rendon for the Angels, 2 years left. I think he's got like $70 million. He might actually get cut because he's been so bad. Dodgers only have one bad contract on their books. For all the contracts that they've signed, they have one bad one, and that's Chris Taylor. Now, they have another one due to injury. That was Yamamoto. His value is still through the roof anyway. I think that his contract will work out just fine. Yankees, they have several bad contracts. They mention Marcus Stroman quite often, but he's only got 1 year left. Stanton, I think that one's still a contract that's pretty bad for them as well. He's got 3 years left, but at least he's marginally productive compared to the last guy on the list, which is DJ LeMahieu, who's got 2 years left. You see how it kind of restricts the moves the Yankees can make? Why they're not in the market for a Bregman? Why they're not in the market for an Arenado? It's because they've already spent the money on these types of players. DeGrom for the Rangers, 3 years already in the future as well. You'd say, why don't we go over the luxury tax once again and get that repeater penalty for the third time? The reason why is because it really restricts you from what you can do financially. The Rangers are not the Dodgers. They don't have that kind of flexibility. So they're not really going after the top flight free agents as well. Fellow Aquarius, mine is today. Okay. Let's see here. I'm guessing you're saying happy birthday. It just occurred to me. Happy birthday to you. Padres, as far as their bad contracts, you look at Machado, he's at least productive on the field, but their one bad deal to me is Xander Bogaerts. Hopefully moving back over to short will work out better for him. Run through the rest of these very quickly. The Rockies with Chris Bryant, one bad contract. Chris Bryant has 0 field value and $108 million due to him over the next 4 years. You think the Rockies are going to be doing anything financially in the next 4 years? Darn right they aren't. So, no, they're not going to be making any noise. The Reds, they were supposedly in the market here for Pete Alonso. I doubt it because I don't think they have the money really to do so. They're still looking for some other help there as well. But they signed Candelario. He's their biggest negative on their roster. They're going to have to count on a bounce back for him. And the one biggest one I do want to mention is the Philadelphia Phillies. They were really hamstrung this offseason to really only doing two small moves, Kepler and bringing in Jesus Luzardo. Don't like either move very much for them. Love the move compared to Luzardo for Kepler anyway, because I think it'll at least help Castellanos. But you look at the three negative deals here. They have Castellanos, they have Taijuan Walker, and Trey Turner. You got to get more out of Trey Turner. That speed alone should be one of the difference makers in that lineup because they need his speed. His batting average around 278 reminds me of a bad year from Corey Seager right before the World Series, or right before the year they go to the World Series. Maybe they can count on a bounce back year for Trey Turner and get back to the level we expect them to be at. But that's a lot of ifs. And with the contract situation with Taijuan Walker, it really limited the choices they could make this offseason to improve the team overall. But those are kind of some of the worst contracts in baseball. There are several others. Just to kind of mention them, I'll just kind of rattle them off real quick. Benintendi with the White Sox, 3 years left. That's terrible. We already mentioned the Mariners, Montgomery and Eduardo Rodriguez for the Diamondbacks. Both of those deals didn't work out that they just signed last year. Blue Jays now have a couple of them. They have Jimenez, they have Barrios, they have Springer. And then the Brewers have Yelich, who had a decent rebound season last year, but still is getting paid way too much and kind of limits the spending that the Brewers can do. Sean, do you think Myles Garrett gets traded? I think he will. After requesting a trade, it's kind of hard to undo that request. Maybe they offer him some ridiculous contract and they mend the fences, but that's not usually how these things work out. There was a good comparison I saw from a couple of different people anyway, but the best one I saw anyway was the Khalil Mack trade from the Raiders. I think that's a very good comp for what could be the return there for Myles Garrett. Maybe we'll even see Micah Parsons on the block after Myles Garrett goes. Let's see here. Cowboys Nation, going to be weird not to see Charlie and Coors. True. Blackman was a great leader for that club as well. Joe, thank you. Appreciate you. Mike, why is Stroman so reviled? I remember when he was a fine pitcher once, but I haven't followed him lately. He still has decent value for the Yankees, but at $18 million and being their number 5, 6, 7 pitcher in that rotation, not exactly getting the job done to the level he once was. So he's probably best getting traded somewhere where he can start every day, or can start in a rotation for a club rather than being used as a bullpen piece, which is probably how he'll be deployed with the Yankees. The Yankees already have plenty of starting pitching. They have Garrett Cole. You have Luis Gil, Carlos Rodon. You have Max Fried, Schmidt. You have a couple others that I'm forgetting as well. But Stroman is easily the number 5, 6, 7 guy in that rotation. I think you trade him, attach a prospect, and let a team eat that entirety of that deal. And say at the trade deadline, maybe that team could then trade him to another club and eat some of that salary to recoup even more value as well. But the Yankees need to save money more than anything else if they want to make any big addition at the trade deadline. I told you guys the Yankees would sign somebody to that bullpen before the start of spring training, and that's what we got today. 1 year, $2.5 million for Tim Hill. Let's see here. Who trades for Garrett? You're thinking the Commanders. Commanders are one of the teams that I've heard connected. I wouldn't be surprised if Detroit did. I think they need another big-time pass rusher along with Aiden Hutchinson. I think that would give them really two really good workhorses defensively. And with the changes that they're going to have in that coaching staff, bringing in somebody like with his talent while they try to adjust that defense after Aaron Glenn has left is going to be very good for them. But I think Detroit just kind of needs to turn the page after how things ended for them last year in the postseason. All right. Appreciate you guys joining us. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe. Spam those hearts in the chat. Really do appreciate you joining us tonight. If you're going to be joining us here for our NBA chat, be sure to type in, let's go with N for basketball. Type in N for if you're joining, or for the NBA. If you're going to join our live tomorrow, discussing the NBA trade deadline, gearing you guys up for our live during the trade deadline that day. So be sure to join us for that one. Hopefully we'll have some activity tonight and tomorrow. Before we head off, I just want to head over to X and just see if anything is happening over there. Not too much. More minor league deals, more rumors on Dylan Cease. If you want to check out the video from yesterday as well, we discussed that possibility quite a bit as well. Let me pull up the MLB trade rumors, recent stories. nothing really there either. All right. Appreciate you guys joining us. We'll be doing our NBA Live tomorrow. Be sure to join us for that one. And then tomorrow night, just like every night, we'll have our MLB Hot Stove Live every single evening. So be sure to join us. Appreciate you guys joining our chat there and messaging us there, Caleb and Sean. Thank you guys very much. Thank you, Stephen, for the super chat. If you guys have sent us a super chat in the past, I want to thank you one more time. I appreciate every single one of those. They mean a whole lot to us, so thank you very much. It goes a long way to supporting our channel, so I really do appreciate it. You guys don't have to do that, but it does certainly go a long way to kind of help this thing keep going the way it has. So thank you guys very much. We'll see you guys tomorrow, and have a good one. Stay safe out there, everybody.